What's in a name? Well, a name can identify you. It can also be your legacy. It can make you stand apart in a crowd. If you think about household names that we know and love these days, people like John Lennon, Frank Sinatra, Freddie Mercury, Steve McQueen, as soon as you hear the name, you can identify who that character is. And it's the same for cars as well. Think about it. If I just said to you Golf, you would immediately picture a Volkswagen Golf, the Mini, with its own personality. Of course, you exactly know, as soon as you say the word Mini, what car we're discussing. Well, there's now another name, and this one's not going to be one that you forget in a hurry, because that name is the Funky Cat. Yep, you heard that correctly. They've called a car the Funky Cat. So, without further ado, welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new ORA Funky Cat, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's road test review of the new ORA Funky Cat, still not sure that I'm quite getting that, please make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel, and as always, once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because then that way you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. After you've watched the video, if you do like it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Let us know how we're doing as a channel, and let us know your thoughts on the cars we review. What do you think of this new Chinese EV brand, ORA, with their Funky Cat? Is it going to be something that would interest you? By all means, please let us know. Now, let's start with who we're discussing here, because ORA is a new brand in the UK, but it's been around since 2018 in its native China, and it's part of Great Wall Motors. Now, you might not be familiar with Great Wall Motors, but they are a huge manufacturer in China, and we have seen them in the UK before, but that was only really with one product, and that was the Steed pickup. ORA is their all-new EV brand. As I say, it's been around since 2018, and it is just going to be an EV brand, much in the way that something like Polestar is. But the question is, would you put your money into something that you've never really heard of before, over such established nameplates such as Volkswagen, Renault or MG? Well, hopefully we're going to find out today as we put the new ORA Funky Cat through the road test that actual car buyers trust to deliver a definitive verdict, the AutoEV one. Now, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that we've actually featured the ORA Cat, as it was called back then, in one of our sneak peek episodes. Well, that was in a studio up at Solihull. This time I'm back and actually going to drive the car, but it's worthwhile that we go over all the elements that we covered in that sneak peek video in a proper road test. So of course that means we're going to start with the styling, and it is a very distinctive looking little car. Well, I say little car, it's actually a lot bigger than you think it is, because it looks small in pictures. It looks like something that might compete with the likes of the Mini or the Fiat 500 or the Honda E, but when you're actually stood next to it and you see the dimensions of it, it's actually competing with cars from the class above. So the Volkswagen ID3, the Renault Megane E-Tech and the MG4. And that's where GWM and ORA see their closest competitors in. So it is a C-sector 5-door family hatchback. But as I say, it's a very distinctive looking one. Now, ORA want to put themselves across as a young and sort of vibrant company. We've seen their sort of like brand video, which shows us people surfing and playing loud music and being on the beach and running around with dogs and rollerblading and that type of thing. But here in Solihull, how does it look? Well, I think it looks alright actually. There's a bit of sort of 911 crossed with Mini sort of thing going on at the front here, with these kind of roundish headlamps here, and the kind of twin bonnet bulges in this car that you see, which is kind of reminiscent of sort of like a, you know, like a Porsche or something. You get this very kind of bold, big bold exclamation mark badge there, you know, statement of intent. You're not going to forget it in a hurry, something that kind of big and bold. And of course there's no grille in the front. It's a completely smoothed over car because you don't need the cooling. Well, there is cooling, it's down here in the front splitter, but actually on the whole, I think from the front certainly this is quite a distinctive looking little car, and certainly cuts its own dash. Now, moving around the side, you can see this kind of curvature that you've got on this front wing, and it's got a kind of almost Coke bottle kind of line to it as it kind of comes along here and then swoops back up at this back window. There's quite a nice line here that runs up into this like big aerodynamic rear spoiler. Nice big thick door handles to use. The charging flap is located here. on the near side front wing. I'm not sure if that's the best place for it, because I'm not sure if I was parked nose into a charging bay, I'd want one of those thick heavy cables coming across the paintwork of the car, but that's where it is. 18-inch wheels standard on this car, and we'll go through trims and specs later because that's quite easy. At the moment there is only one, and they all come on these nice kind of 5-spoke 18-inch alloy wheels. Big prominent door mirrors there, and then, as I say, just moving towards the back, you've got this kind of bustled back here. 3 centimetres shorter than an ID3, but believe it or not, it's taller and it's a little bit wider. And it's round the back, you can see what I was saying about that kind of bustled back. Now, there's a sort of a hint of first generation Nissan Leaf to this car for me, and also the kind of, remember the old Renault Megane, the kind of shaking its, you know what? Yeah, it kind of looks a little bit like that. Quite distinctive because you've got the rear lights actually embedded into the glass screen. This isn't the high level brake light, that's up there. This is actually the tail lights of the car, and they do this kind of funky dance for the Funky Cat when you sort of like unlock the car, but that's where they're located. Reversing lights, indicators down at the bottom there, and then of course you get the big ORA badge there and the Funky Cat badge there and another GWM badge here. Yeah, I'd probably be debadging the car if it was me. You've also got sort of like parking sensors sort of like embedded in the back bumper and a little camera embedded in there, and then this nice kind of rear kind of plastic diffuser with a fog light down in there. As I say, it's distinctive and it stands out in the marketplace. But what do you think? Let us know, as always, in the comments down below. Now, whilst it does compete with the Volkswagen ID3, the MG4 and cars in that C sector, hatch sector, it's not huge in this boot at just 228 litres. Now, to put that into some perspective, the ID3, not the biggest in its class, is 385 litres. A Renault Zoe, which in all intents and purposes is the class below this, is 338 litres. So it's not huge back here, if I'm being honest with you. You've got a sort of like a small flip-up parcel shelf, which reminds me a little like the ones you get on the Fiat 500. And it's quite a high load cell. I don't have my luggage with me today, unfortunately, but I can pretty much tell you that the 4 AutoEV suitcases would not be fitting in there, that's for sure. And as I say, there is quite a high bumper to lift them over, and then there's a drop down in there. There's a small amount of storage underneath for one of the cables, but the other one comes in this bag, which is velcroed to the floor, and this particular car's got a first aid kit. So as I say, it isn't huge back here. You can flip the rear seats down by just pulling up on these tabs and then flipping them down as that, and you've got the standard 60-40 split rear seat. But even again, it doesn't open up to a huge amount of commodious space. It's about 885 litres on total. So that's one area where the Cat does kind of fall short in my book. Now, there's no storage up at the front. Despite being a dedicated EV platform, there's no storage up at the front, because obviously that's where your motor is. But yeah, a bit disappointing that in terms of overall storage space in the boot. So how does it fare in the rear? Well, actually, it's okay. I mean, as I say, as usual, this seat is set up for myself, and I am about 5'7", 5'8", and there is plenty of knee room for me. I can get my feet underneath the front seat as well. It's not particularly wide feeling back here, but it's okay. Certainly 3 children across the back would be fine. You do get a relatively flat floor as well. There's a tiny little raised part there, but not much. And there is a USB port just there, obviously for charging iPads or electronics and things like that. You've got mat pockets on the backs of the front seats, smallish door bins. They're not shaped to take a water bottle or anything, and you do get a fold down armrest with your cup holders in there. So in terms of rear seat accommodation, it is actually better. Now that's part as well, it's helped by the height of the car, because I say it is actually quite a tall car for the class, and you do get a good amount of headroom as well. So yes, rear accommodation is much better rather than sort of like boot space, and as I say, it certainly feels on a par with things like the Volkswagen ID3, the Cupra Born and the MG4. Now, up front, this is where things start to get really good, because I tell you what, the fit and finish and the quality of this car is really very good. It's on a par, I would say, certainly on these first impressions that I've had today, and from what I remember from last year, it's on a par with the likes of Kia and Hyundai and, you know, an MG in terms of its fit and finish, which means actually it feels a bit more special than the ID3 from Volkswagen. Now, it's a bit like the Ioniq 5 and the new Ioniq 6 in terms of what you have, and maybe Mercedes-Benz as well, because what you have is two 10.25-inch screens on top of the dashboard, nestled behind a single pane of glass. So you've got your driver information display obviously on your right, and then obviously the infotainment system on the left. Now, there's a lot to go through on the car. So everything else is sort of like controlled up here. So you can have your you know, your different sort of like settings up here if you want, vehicle settings, system settings. You can have a My Account, because what there's in development, there's going to be an app that you can have where obviously you can find out the vehicle's state of charge and those type of things with it as well. You're probably seeing Abigail Andre in front of me here from a channel called She Talks Cars, which is actually very, very good. Don't tell the rest of the boys at AutoEV I said that, but we're all here filming today, so it's quite fun. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, back to this. Yeah, so you've got vehicle settings and such like, where you can go into system settings, where you can go into various different things, so your Bluetooth and all the rest of it, and obviously you can have your radio on there, Bluetooth music and USB and so forth. Now, there's also a voice recognition system in the car, which I won't say, but basically, well actually no, why not? Let's do this. Hello Aura.
I'm listening.
Navigate me to London.
London, England, United Kingdom, right.
So there we go. And then you can do various different things. The clever thing about this as well, oh, cancel.
Okay, cancelled.
The clever thing about it is, depending obviously, the passenger can use this as well, and it knows where the voice is coming from. So if the passenger's if your passenger wants to turn on their heated seat, for instance, or open the window, they can also use this voice recognition, and the car knows where the voice is coming from and will obviously activate the functions where they're from. So I think that's pretty decent. The other thing that's worth discussing is this up here. So this is facial recognition camera, and this will do various different things. There's a huge amount of safety kit on the car that you would almost expect from more kind of luxurious, more premium manufacturers. But this is what this little camera here does, and it does various different things, such as it can tell if you're drowsy. So if you're constantly yawning, it will bring up a warning and tell you that you're yawning, and maybe it might be an idea to stop and take a break. It also knows who it is. So in other words, if there's two of you drive the car and you've got your particular settings, so your seat settings, your preferred radio stations, things like that, and that'll set it up depending who gets in the car. It also detects the vehicle interior. So if you get out the car and you've left your dog in the car, for instance, or your child, not that you'd ever forget leaving your dog or your child, well maybe your child, but definitely not your dog, it will tell you. It will tell you that someone's still in the car as you get out. So again, a lot of safety equipment that's available on this style of car. But going back to the sort of like the design of this, I really like it. It's a really nice place to sit. You've got this sort of like suede effect, almost kind of leather, almost like nubuck leather on the dashboard, which is standard on this first edition car, which is lovely. I love these kind of Art Deco kind of style sort of like face vents, and these toggle switches, which are a little bit reminiscent of what Mini did in the original Minis, but there we go. But they're there and they're quite nice. I like that. You've got this console here, which is great. You've got two big cup holders there, storage down here, USB connectivity down there. There's also an old 12-volt socket for charging there. Electronic park brake, wireless charging pad. We've got a deep enough door, sort of like elbow rest in there with storage. There's good sized door bins, albeit they wouldn't take a water bottle. And and the driving position itself, which is really very nice. It's a comfortable seat to be sat in. You've got this nice 2-spoke wheel, which is round. Thank you, Aura. None of this silly stuff that I've come up here on an MG4 and it's got this silly kind of quartic steering wheel, which I just don't like. Thankfully this is a nice round one, and it's got just enough controls on the steering wheel as well, depending obviously on what you want to use. The ones on the left, they control the media and its infotainment screen up there, and the ones on the right control the driver information display up here. So that's all nice and straightforward and simple. And the buttons are actually pushed further into the boss of the wheel, so you're not likely to hit them with the heel of your hand like you do in the likes of the ID3. Good driving position, and a comfortable seat. You get this nice sort of quilted style kind of leatherette on the doors and the tops of the seats, and then this kind of soft kind of almost nubuck style leather in the seat centres, which is nice. This nice kind of art deco kind of material on the centre console here, with again a rotary drive control like we see on other cars. That's good. And there's just a feeling of quality about it. Everything feels like it is well screwed together. You know, nothing feels like it rattles, nothing feels, you know, shoddy, nothing seems to be creaking and things. It is a very impressive little place to be. So yeah, you know, full marks, ORA. This is vying for class best in terms of its interior, I would suggest. Now, the ORA Funky Cat is only going to be available in one battery size initially, and that's a 48 kilowatt hour one, meaning a WLTP range of around about 193 miles. Now that is, well, low for class, let's be honest, and it's a little bit disappointing. The other disappointing thing is charging speeds. They'll only go up to 64 kilowatts, meaning your usual 10 to 80% benchmark takes around about 42 minutes. So other cars in the class do perform a lot better at this point. It does mean, however, with such a smaller battery, that if you're charging up from your 7 kilowatt wall box, then it can be done in just over 5.5 hours. And the car will take 11 kilowatt three-phase charging, dropping that time to just under 4 hours if you have an 11 kilowatt wall box at home or work. So, the ORA Funky Cat, is it funky to drive? Oh, it's okay. It's all right. It's a single motor, 171 PS, meaning a 0 to 60 time of around about 8.5 seconds. So not the slowest in the class, not the quickest. It's about where you'd want a 5-door family car to be, I would suggest. Out on the open road, there's a couple of things that have sort of come to light since I've been driving it. And whilst the seats initially seem very, very comfortable, I feel like I'm sitting a little bit too high, and they're down as low as I can go. Now again, I appreciate everyone's got different driving positions, but the one thing I will say is they don't have the length in the squab, and as you know, I'm a real shorty, so if you've got longer legs, there's not a huge amount of support underneath your knees, and you can't tilt them. There is a good range of adjustment, don't get me wrong. You can alter the steering column for reach and rake. You know, there's electric adjustment on the driver's seat. You know, but it just doesn't tilt, and it doesn't tilt up. So as I say, I'm finding that there's no real support for me there. It's also one of these cars that as soon as you get in, there's no power on button. It knows when you're in the car, and then you just sort of like get on with it. What else have we got? Well, we've got different modes as well on the car. Every time you press them, it does a funny wee jingle like that. So there's automatic, normal mode, sport mode. Ooh, sport mode. And it does, you know, there's a much sharper kind of throttle response from it and things like that. It's not going to turn it into a hot hatchback, however. It's not going to do that. But it's there, you know, you've got it, and that's fine. The one thing that I am finding a little bit irritating is things like the brake regeneration, and it's the same on the MG4 in fairness. You've got to go into the screen to get it. So there's 3 levels of brake regen. Well, there's actually 4. So there's light, normal, and heavy assistance, I think it's called, or something like that. But then there's a further 1-pedal drive mode as well. But you've got to go into the screen to find it. You know, so whereas you like, say, you've got, you know, Kia and Hyundai that give you the paddles, or, you know, MG on the old MG5 where you had the button, that'd have been quite nice. Maybe one of these toggle switches just to adjust the brake regen, you know, for when you want to, you know, use it and when you don't. Again, like the MG, you've got to go into the screen to adjust the climate control system. Don't get me wrong, there is voice activation on it as well. You can ask it to do various different things by saying, hey, asking it to sort of like, you know, turn on the heated seat, or turn, you know, or open the window or whatever, and that's very clever. I get all that, brilliant. But for other kind of stuff that I want, you know, a little bit more quicker access to, shall we say, likes the brake regeneration, I'd quite like that on a button, or, you know, a paddle or something. That'd have been quite nice. Anyway, that's my kind of gripe there. What's the actual drive of the car like? Well, as I say, it's okay. It's not up there with class best. It doesn't feel as composed as likes of the Megane E-Tech. It doesn't feel as refined as the Cupra Born. It's you know, that it's somewhere sort of, it falls short, if I'm being honest with you. It's a really windy day today that we're filming this, but even so, there's quite a lot of external noise coming into the car, you know, and it's not on particularly big chunky wheels, you know, it's, you know, or big thick tires, you know, or, you know, so that it does feel like there's a lot of external noise coming into the car, which is something you don't get, as I say, on the Cupra Born. You know, you get onto the more kind of twisty roads like we're on now, and even in sport mode, you can just, it feels like it would get out of shape quite quickly, if I'm honest with you. It feels like the turning's all right, but again, the seat isn't particularly supportive, so you do tend to find yourself kind of falling out of it a little bit. That's what I will say. What has to be commended is the level of safety systems that are on this car, and that could be a real winner for some people. So, you know, what they've done with it in terms of, you know, you've got your usual lane keep assist, brake assist, and all the rest of it, but it goes one stage further as well. You've got rear cross traffic alert, blind spot monitoring, even opening your door. If you go to open your door and there's a cyclist coming along, it will warn you, which is really good. And as I say, we've mentioned about the driver recognition system before, where it notices if you're feeling a bit, or if you're looking a bit drowsy or stuff, it will come up and tell you just to maybe take a bit of a break. There's a bit of it that's a bit overzealous. A couple of times I've been out the drive, you know, and I'm aware of the fact that on a motorway I was doing slightly over 70 miles an hour. I don't need to be told that, I'm aware of it, but it does keep telling me that, which is a little bit annoying, I suppose. The brakes, they're all right. There's a relative amount of feel to them. I don't know if you can hear, there's always the kind of bings and bongs that keep kind of starting up. Every time I maybe do something that the car's not so keen on, like I brake a little bit too hard, or I maybe just over correct, and it keeps coming up saying emergency steering is activated. Not sure why. Why is it activated, the emergency steering? Who knows? Don't know. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I would probably say it's probably a little bit better round about town than it is out on the open road. I'm just finding its limitations a little bit too quickly in the chassis department. It certainly has got nowhere near the composure and the fluency of the Megane E-Tech, and as I say, it's not close to the Cupra Born either, two of its big rivals. The MG4, it's got to say the MG4 steers a little bit better than this as well. So I think it's more of a town car. Once you say you go out with the town boundaries and you start to explore the limits of it, you stumble across them a little bit too quickly for my liking. And as I say, on the motorway, it's not as refined as maybe as I thought it was going to be. And I'm a little bit disappointed with the lack of support of this seat as well. So, summary. Well, as I say, I think it's one of those cars that if you're driving around town at sort of like 6/10, there's very little to fault in terms of, you know, it's light, it's easy to use, the controls are quite nice. But as I say, once you start to explore the limits of it, once you start to get out with that, that's where it starts to really fall short. One other thing that I must say that I do like over the MG is this style of screen. I know we talked about it in the interior section, but it's very clear, it's very well laid out. There's a lot of information like you get on the MG, but it's much more evenly kind of spaced out, and it's much easier to kind of read at a glance. So that's what I will say is good about it, but I wanted a little bit more from it. Now maybe that's going to be, maybe that's different with they have shown a GT, a Funky Cat GT. They haven't told us whether or not that is going to have any different chassis settings or power settings, or whether it is just going to be a trim level. We don't know yet, but you know, the people who are bringing the Auras into the UK have said they're still trying to decide on that. So it would be interesting to see. But if there is more to be engineered out of this chassis, I think it needs to be. There we go. So what are you paying to have a Funky Cat on your driveway? Well, it's £31,995. So it's not the £25,000 bargain that we thought it was going to be when we first initially saw the car. But to counter that, it is very well equipped. I mean, there was only two options available in the car, and that's metallic paint at just under £600 and a duotone interior at just under £800. Everything else comes as standard. So that is fairly decent in terms of equipment in comparison with some of its rivals. And bear in mind what you have to pay to get into a base Volkswagen ID3 is, well, a few £1,000s more, and it's nowhere near the same standard of equipment that the Aura is. There's also going to be a relatively decent sort of like finance offer, so they're going to launch it with a £3,500 deposit down and around about £399 a month for the first 4 years. And the car does come with a 5-year unlimited mileage warranty. And the other thing to take into account is whole life running costs, because servicing intervals are only every 2 years or 18,000 miles. And in terms of competition, well, of course, we've been mentioning them all the way through. It is, of course, the Volkswagen ID3 and its Cupra-born cousin are two of the main rivals. But Aura also see things like the Renault Megane E-Tech as being a rival, and of course things like the Hyundai Kona, their small compact crossover. But you've got to also think there's Citroen's brilliant value for money EC4, and although the car is, well, as I say, competing in that C-sector, hatchback sector, Renault's Zoe isn't really far off this, and it does offer a much bigger range. But the big threat, the real big competition to the ORA Funky Cat is from another Chinese brand that we're a little bit more familiar with, and that is the brilliant MG4. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new ORA Funky Cat. We like its styling, the interior design, use of materials and build quality, and it's well equipped as standard. We don't like the battery size, range and charging speed is way behind class best. The boot is small for class. The limitations of its chassis dynamics. The fact that many of the features we want to have quick access to are buried in the infotainment screen. And the price isn't the bargain that we thought it might be. So, what do we make of the new ORA Funky Cat? Well, when I first came to see the car a year ago, I had high hopes for it. I thought its style kind of cut its own dash, it kind of didn't really conform to any particular way, and in some respects it still does. It's not quite the value for money proposition that I thought it was going to be, however, and therein lies one of its biggest issues. You see, the problem that the ORA Funky Cat has is the car that I drove here in today to come and see it. The new MG4, a car that's come straight bang into its class. Great value for money, brilliant range, good driving dynamics and a class-leading warranty. Is the ORA Funky Cat the worst car in its class? No, but neither is it the best, which means it needs to relegate itself to be a worthy, but not quite good enough, alternative. Thank you for watching another edition of AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below, because that way you'll receive notification of when our next video goes live. If you've enjoyed the video, please make sure you do give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments down below, good or bad. Have I made the right decision? Is the Funky Cat a better car than the new MG4? Let me know in your comments down below. Do you have one on order? Are there any questions you have that we might be able to help answer? As I say, please do let us know. Remember, we're across all social media platforms as well, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn, so please do give us a follow there as well, because every little bit does help us. And if you want to know more about AutoEV and you're desperate to hear another review from an old silly Scotsman talking about electric cars, then stick on our YouTube channel, because as I say, there's now well over 100 videos on there, including van reviews, sneak peek, motorbike reviews by our friend Charlie Berman, and plenty more new electric car reviews. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching and supporting the channel. I will see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.